Welcome to War Bios, the podcast where we delve into the most pivotal battles in history, examining the strategic context, operational art, and human cost of conflict. Today, we're going to explore one of the most significant battles in Roman history, the Battle of the Milvian Bridge. This clash of titans took place on October 28, 3012 AD, and it would change the course of Western civilization forever. To understand the significance of the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, we need to go back to the year 306 AD, when the Roman Empire was divided into two parts: the Western Empire, ruled by Maxentius's father, Maximian, and the Eastern Empire, ruled by Galerius. This division, known as the Tetrarchy, was an attempt to bring stability to the empire after a period of civil war and external pressures. However, this arrangement was short-lived, as Constantine, who was then a relatively unknown general, rose to power in Britain and began his march towards Rome. Constantine's ascent was swift and decisive, driven by a combination of military prowess, strategic thinking, and luck. He had inherited the loyalty of his father's troops and quickly expanded his influence through a series of victories against rival claimants to the throne. As he marched towards Italy, he faced numerous challenges, including the need to secure the loyalty of his troops, navigate the complex web of alliances and rivalries that characterize Roman politics, and overcome the logistical hurdles of supplying his army on the move. Meanwhile, Maxentius was busy consolidating his power in Rome, using a combination of propaganda, bribery, and coercion to maintain control over the city and its inhabitants. He had declared himself emperor of the Western Empire, and his forces were formidable, comprising some of the best troops in the empire. Maxentius was well aware of Constantine's rise and saw him as a significant threat to his power. He began to prepare for war, mobilizing his troops and fortifying the city's defenses. As Constantine approached Italy, he knew that he faced a daunting task: breaching the defenses of Rome and defeating Maxentius's army in battle. The city of Rome was a labyrinth of narrow streets, alleys, and fortifications, making it a difficult place to attack. The Milvian Bridge, which spanned the Tiber River just north of the city, was a critical choke point that controlled access to Rome. Whoever held the bridge would have a significant advantage in any battle for control of the city. The months leading up to the Battle of the Milvian Bridge were marked by a series of skirmishes and maneuvers between Constantine's and Maxentius's forces. Constantine had been campaigning in northern Italy, winning a series of victories that had weakened Maxentius's grip on the region. However, Maxentius still controlled Rome, and his forces were formidable. As Constantine's army approached the bridge, they could see the enemy lines arrayed before them, a formidable force of infantry, archers, and cavalry. The air was thick with tension as the two armies faced off, each waiting for the other to make the first move. The soldiers on both sides knew that this battle would be decisive, that the fate of the empire hung in the balance. Constantine, aware of the significance of the moment, took a moment to address his troops, urging them to fight with courage and conviction. His words were met with a thunderous roar as the soldiers steeled themselves for the battle ahead. Constantine was a skilled orator, able to inspire his troops with his vision of victory and glory. The atmosphere on the battlefield was electric, with both sides eager to engage in combat. The soldiers were motivated by a mix of factors, including loyalty to their commanders, desire for plunder and glory, and fear of defeat. As the day wore on, the sense of anticipation built towards a crescendo, with both sides knowing that the battle would soon commence. As the two armies faced off on the banks of the Tiber River, the air was thick with tension, heavy with the weight of anticipation and foreboding. The date was October 28, 312 AD, a day that would etch its mark in the annals of Roman history as one of the most pivotal battles ever fought. Constantine's army, bolstered by his victories in northern Italy, stood as a formidable force, their morale high and their resolve unshaken. Yet, Maxentius's troops were well entrenched and determined to defend their city to the last breath, driven by a fierce loyalty to their leader and the conviction that Rome itself hung in the balance. The battle began with a series of skirmishes between the two armies as each side probed the other's defenses, seeking weaknesses to exploit. Constantine's cavalry, comprising heavily armored cataphracts whose horses' hooves pounded the earth like thunder, and lighter-armed mounted archers who danced around the fringes of the battle with deadly precision, clashed with Maxentius's horsemen in a series of intense engagements. The sound of clashing steel rang out across the battlefield, mingling with the thunder of hooves and the cries of the fallen as the two forces struggled for control. Meanwhile, the infantry on both sides began to engage, their shields locked in tight formation like interlocking tiles as they exchanged blows that shook the very foundations of the earth. Constantine's troops, largely composed of veteran legionaries who had seen countless battles and emerged scarred but unbroken, held their ground against the fierce onslaught of Maxentius's soldiers with a discipline born of years of training and combat. The fighting was intense and brutal, with both sides suffering heavy casualties that littered the battlefield like autumn leaves. As the day wore on, Constantine became increasingly aware of the importance of securing the Milvian Bridge, that critical choke point which controlled access to Rome itself. He knew that if he could capture the bridge, he would be able to pour his troops into the city and overwhelm Maxentius's defenses, bringing a swift end to the conflict. With this strategic objective in mind, he ordered a series of assaults on the bridge, each one designed to wear down the enemy's resistance like waves crashing against an unyielding shore. One of Constantine's most trusted generals, a grizzled veteran named Valerius, whose face was etched with the lines of countless battles and whose eyes burned with a fire that seemed almost otherworldly, led the first assault. His troops, a mix of seasoned legionaries and fresh recruits eager to prove themselves in the crucible of battle, charged forward with reckless abandon, their swords raised high like a forest of steel that threatened to engulf everything in its path. The enemy lines wavered under the ferocity of the attack, but they held firm, inflicting heavy casualties on the attackers who fell like wheat before a scythe. Undeterred by this setback, Constantine ordered a second assault, this time led by his own Praetorian Guard, those elite troops hand-picked for their bravery and loyalty. These soldiers charged forward with precision and discipline, their shields locked in tight formation as they advanced into the heart of the enemy's defenses like an unstoppable juggernaut. The enemy lines began to buckle under the pressure, and slowly but surely, Constantine's troops began to gain ground, their foothold on the bridge growing more secure with each passing moment. As the battle raged on, Maxentius himself became increasingly desperate, his face pale and drawn as he watched his defenses crumble before his very eyes. He knew that if he lost control of the bridge, his city would be doomed, and with it, his own reign would come to a swift and ignominious end. In a last-ditch effort to stem the tide of defeat, he ordered his most trusted troops, the Imperial Guard, to launch a counterattack against Constantine's forces. The Imperial Guard, comprising the finest soldiers in the empire, charged forward with reckless abandon, their swords flashing in the sunlight like 1,000 points of light. The two forces clashed in a maelstrom of steel and blood, each side determined to emerge victorious as the fate of Rome itself seemed to hang precariously in the balance. The outcome of the battle was far from certain, as if the gods themselves were weighing the fates of these two leaders and their armies. As the Imperial Guard clashed with Constantine's forces on that fateful day in 312 AD, the battle reached its climax amidst a tapestry of clashing steel, thundering hooves, and the cries of the fallen. The two armies fought fiercely, each side determined to emerge victorious, their armor glinting in the sunlight as they exchanged blows on the blood-soaked plains near the Milvian Bridge. However, Constantine's superior tactics, honed from years of campaigning against the Franks and the Alemanni, and the discipline of his troops who had been drilled to perfection, eventually began to pay off. The Imperial Guard, despite their bravery and the formidable reputation they had built over centuries, started to falter under the relentless pressure. Constantine's forces, sensing victory within their grasp, pressed their advantage with renewed vigor, pushing the enemy back towards the river Tiber. The sound of clashing steel, the scent of sweat and blood, and the cries of the wounded filled the air as the battle raged on. Maxentius, realizing that his cause was lost, attempted to flee across the bridge, but it was too late. The structure, weakened by the constant fighting and the weight of the soldiers, collapsed under the pressure, sending Maxentius and many of his troops tumbling into the water below. The river, which had borne witness to countless battles and conquests throughout Rome's storied history, now became a grave for the vanquished. The Battle of the Milvian Bridge was all but over. Constantine's forces had emerged victorious, and Maxentius was dead, drowned in the Tiber. The city of Rome, sensing the shift in power, quickly opened its gates to Constantine, who was hailed as a hero by the people. As the new ruler of Rome, Constantine would go on to have a profound impact on the course of history, issuing the Edict of Milan and paving the way for Christianity to become a dominant force in the empire. The Battle of the Milvian Bridge marked a turning point in Roman history, ushering in a new era of Christian dominance and cementing Constantine's place as one of the most influential leaders of all time. As historian Edward Gibbon once observed, the victory of Constantine was preceded by a singular circumstance, which, according to the credulity of the age, decided the fate of the battle. This event, often seen as a miracle by early Christian writers, would become an integral part of the legend surrounding Constantine's rise to power. His military genius, coupled with his ability to adapt to changing circumstances, played a significant role in the outcome. The fact that he was able to inspire loyalty and devotion in his troops, many of whom were Christians, also contributed to his success. The impact of the battle can still be felt today, from the spread of Christianity to the rise of modern nation-states. The Battle of the Milvian Bridge serves as a powerful reminder of the enduring power of human ingenuity, determination, and faith. That's all for today's War Bios. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, I'm General Biography reminding you to keep marching toward victory.